I always felt kind of inferior a little bit, and so I always didn't have very much confidence. And that's maybe a little bit answer to your question too, in that I didn't know who my dad was, and it was always sort of this mystery around who my father was, and I think it made me feel kind of inferior as I was growing up. And so as I was growing up, I didn't have that much confidence to be outgoing as much. And so I think I kind of was keeping more to myself rather than being outgoing and social, because I had this sort of inferiority complex growing up as a kid. I mean, I was happy, don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I was, curling up in the corner, crying myself to sleep. I mean, I had a happy life, but I think underneath it, in terms of dealing with other people and kind of, reaching out and socializing, I wasn't very good at that, because I felt sort of like there was something, like I was different in the fact that I didn't have a dad growing up. Well, I was a teacher at Washington School in about 1981, 82, 83. And I did enjoy that. But what I found was that dealing with a group of 30 junior high students, I didn't feel like I was having much of an impact on them. Although, as it turns out now, whenever I run into those students, I always said, "Oh, Mr. Neel, we enjoyed your class, we had fun, we learned so much, blah, blah, blah." But at the time, I felt like, I wasn't having much of an impact, and I thought, I could do a better job of affecting people's lives or helping them in some way. I guess I was brought up to kind of be a helper, if I could do it more one-on-one. And so that kind of motivated me to go back to school and get my counseling credential and master's degree. So I was working at Washington School. I do that all day, hop in the car, drive down to Sonoma State and run at Park, take night classes, then come back, have dinner, go to bed, whatever, wake up, go to Washington School, and do that day after day after day for 5 years. So I was motivated to do it. So I also wanted to accomplish getting a master's degree. So that was part of the motivation too. Remember, I felt like I was inferior, and all of a sudden I realized, God, I can't be stupid. If I'm getting a master's degree and I went to Berkeley, I must be okay. So I think there was sort of a certain amount of having to prove to myself that I was, good enough, so to speak, because as I was growing up, I always felt like I was inferior. So that was part of it too. It used to be a small community where everybody knew everybody, and you could go shopping for shoes, books, records or CDs, clothing. There was a J.C. Penney's, Sears in town, not a big one, but like a catalog store. You could go all kinds of shopping. Doesn't exist anymore because people don't support it. They shop in Santa Rosa or Healdsburg or wherever. There was sort of an old-time Cloverdale, too, where people that had lived in Cloverdale for all their lives, they grew up there, a lot of Italian families, and they all went to the Citrus Fair, and they all went to church together, and they had a sense of community. And Cloverdale's changed because everybody worked at the mills in the past, or mostly the mills, and with the mills shutting down and it becoming more of a bedroom community, so people work somewhere else and just live in Cloverdale, it's lost that sense of community where everybody knows everybody. I mean, I think to a certain extent that still exists, but it's a faster life too, and you go to the Citrus Fair, and they had 2 Citrus Fair exhibits done by, was it Kiwanis and Lions Club? Well, in past years, they may have had 10 Citrus Fair exhibits. Why? Because there were different organizations and groups in town, and they weren't doing other things. That was They did community projects together. And that doesn't happen as much as it used to. So I think it's much less of a sense of community than it used to be. Keep your options open. Because I think you guys are at an age where a lot of times people feel like, oh my God, I got to decide what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And the reality is you're going to do something completely different than what you think you're going to do, or it's going to be something that you haven't even ever thought of before. And so sometimes kids have this pressure to decide what they're going to do, and it's like, you don't need to. You know, I always say to kids, you know, if you asked 100 people from the streets of downtown Cloverdale, are they doing what they thought they'd be doing when they were a senior in high school? 99 of them would say, God, you got to be kidding me, right? So keep your options open, but continue to get education or training, and it'll make you more competitive in the world in terms of jobs. It'll also make your life richer and fuller. You know, you have more experiences, you meet different people, you have more options if you have more education and training. And so to just kind of keep moving forward and keeping your options open. And one of the things is, the reason you go to college isn't so much necessarily to get a degree, but it's also to kind of help you experience new things so that you can figure out what you want to do. You know, you guys are growing up in Cloverdale, and it is a small community, and there aren't that many experiences and that many options. And you want to go somewhere where you can kind of pick the fruit of all the different things in your life that you might be able to have. And so, but you got to do some work to do that. You know, you got to apply to college, or you got to, you know, do well in your classes so that you can open up those options. That's what I would advise.
My name is Jesus Huey.
My name is Paul Cabrera.
My name is Itzel Forrest.